Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Veterinary Life Coach Podcast. If it's your first time here, thank you so much for joining me. This is the podcast where we talk about all things veterinary medicine, self-development, and improving our physical and mental well-being. Today, I have an incredible guest for you. Her name is Dr. Aleksandra Ascione. She's a licensed veterinarian in Poland, a non-licensed veterinarian here in the US, and a content creator on Instagram as Veterinary Fair. She's a candidate for ECFVG, and she's going to tell me what that's all about. Welcome to the podcast, Aleksandra. I'm so happy to have you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you came on. We're going to have a great time. So the first question I always ask everyone on my podcast is to tell me their veterinary story. So could you share your veterinary story with us?
Absolutely. I think that my story is not really the standard story because
That's good. We like different ones.
so I didn't really have the feeling of wanting to become specifically a veterinarian. I just really wanted to do something with medicine. And I think the reason behind that is that ever since I was a kid, my mom would bring me to work with her, and my mom is a lab analyst in a human hospital. And she raised me by herself. So sometimes, she didn't have anyone to watch me. So she would just bring me to work. And I would be all over the place playing with everything that I could safely.
All the medical supplies, syringes,
Yes.
things.
Yeah. The syringes, the gloves, the
Yeah, those are great toys for kids.
Oh, yes. I loved it. I have lots of pictures from the time. And I still remember that it was my biggest dream to have clogs like all the other doctors and nurses.
I'll have to tell you my clog story.
So ever since I was a kid, I wanted to wear those clogs and be one of those people.
Awesome.
So naturally, it was always somewhere in the back of my head, and I always loved science in school, all the, biology, chemistry, not so much, but biology mostly. And I still remember when I was about 15, and that was the moment when in Poland we have to make a decision what we want to do in high school, because that sets you up for what university program you will be even able to apply to. You don't do college in Poland. So you have to make that decision pretty early on. And I still remember that I had that conversation about becoming a human physician versus a veterinarian. And I got to say that I did make some valid points at that time. But I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to try to become a human physician. So when it was the time to make all those big decisions, I was following that track, but chemistry was never my strong side. And because of that, I didn't get into medicine in university, but I got into vet school. And at first it was, a failure to me, but then after thinking about it for a little while longer and discussing it with my mom, I realized that, the most important compartment of it, which is medicine itself, the science, it's the same, more or less. So
yeah, it is. It's exactly the same. There's just a lot more to learn in vet med.
which I did not realize at that time.
Yeah, because you have more species, right?
Yeah, now I think maybe it would have been easier to just, study that chemistry a little bit harder. But I have no regrets about going into vet school and becoming a veterinarian. And until, this day, I really feel passionate about the scientific aspect of it.
So were you an animal person, or did you have to adopt that to become a veterinarian?
So, I mean, obviously, I loved animals like every kid, but I didn't have any animals until I was 17. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, I did have a fish, a goldfish that committed. Yeah, she jumped out of the tank.
jumped out of the bowl.
Yeah.
Committed suicide. Poor thing.
Uh, Still sad, still sad.
Yeah, that is sad.
So yeah, I did get my dog when I was 17, past the time when I had already made the decision of pursuing one or the other. The dog actually ended up immigrating with me
Nice.
to the US. She just passed away in October. Uh,
Ugh.
yeah, so she was there with me throughout,
So
all.
she was your first dog.
Yes,
Yeah,
first.
I
Yeah,
think that's the hardest one to lose in a lot of ways. I mean, I've had multiple dogs in my lifetime, and I it's hard to lose all of them, but that very first one is super special.
yeah. It was my first pet. So losing your
Mhm.
first one when you're 30, I'm sure it, hits different,
Oh
but
yeah, they're
you're
like
not
a
the right
child
age.
to you.
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
but
that's a big grief.
actually an interesting thing, because you asked about, having pets and leading to vet med. Actually, it was the opposite. Like at some point, I realized that I couldn't relate with cat owners well enough, and I've never had a cat. So I was like, we need to get a cat. So
We need to
it
figure
was,
this cat thing out.
yeah, so it was actually the other way around than usual, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, we do that sometimes. We adopt pets just so we can learn how to take care of them so we
Yeah.
can relate to the clients, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So that journey to become a veterinarian was different in a lot of ways because you thought you wanted to be a medical doctor. What do you think about that now? Can you see yourself being a human doctor, or are you like, oh, no way?
Yeah. So funny enough, my husband is a human physician.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so
And he's the one that brought you over here to the US.
yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, he was still in med school and I was still in vet school when we met. So I got to take a peek into what his life was like and seeing him work now. He is almost done with board certification in emergency medicine.
Oh,
Yeah, so he is ER doctor working night shifts. He's seen, the bad, the ugly, and however you say that.
yeah,
Um,
the good, the bad, and the ugly.
yes, yeah. Um, I don't envy him. You know,
No, that would be a hard. I've thought of that. I'm like, would I have been a good human doctor? Mm-mm. No, I can't imagine it.
Yeah, so I don't regret, but I also appreciated that, when we both are home, I get to listen about it and like still kind of enjoy some aspects of it without
Mhm.
enduring like all the stress of it.
Right. And you understand the medicine, which it makes for a good conversation because
Oh
when he
yeah.
wants to tell you a story, you get it.
Yes.
You
Yeah. And
can't
vice versa.
things. Yeah, that's awesome. So tell me how you went from, did you practice when you were in Poland before you came over here?
So not really. The thing is that I graduated 2 weeks before the first COVID lockdown. So I had
That's really
everything
bad
I
timing, right?
the actually I think it was like the worst and the best thing that could have happened. Um, so I had my internship lined up, but obviously they had to cancel it because they didn't want anyone coming into the clinic that was not essential staff. So
Right.
I ended up staying home for the longest time. But then I started shadowing at one of the clinics when they lift up the lockdown for a
Hmm.
bit. But my personal situation at home was not really allowing me to take on a full-time job or anything like that because at that time, me and my mom had to take care of my dying grandpa. So yeah, so I had to be able to leave the clinic at any moment. So that doesn't really make you a good,
Not a good employee, right?
employee. Yes, yeah. Um, so I did see a couple patients, but not really like a full on medical workup. I still remember my first patient was a pigeon
Oh, that's awesome. Well,
that got,
I was a bird, or like I guess I still am, but I did a lot of birds, so I saw a lot of pigeons.
I don't really know much about pigeons, but that case was just, a typical, your flying rat type of pigeon that
Right.
that got hit by a bicycle in the
Oh,
old town of our city.
yeah.
And a young girl brought him in. So it was not like, she was going to pay for hospitalization.
Right, right, right.
It was more of a like, can you please check him out if it's fine to let him go fly away. And, I did my physical exam to the best of my ability. And I was like, yep, I think he's fine. And, just went outside and watched him fly away. So
Oh, that's fun. Well,
that,
that's a good outcome. He got to fly
that
away
was a
free, right?
success. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. So now you're here in the US, and I understand that that's a challenge. I have other people that I've talked to in the past that are foreign veterinarians, and what a rigmarole that is. So tell me about a little bit about that.
So to say that it's a challenge, I really feel like it's an understatement because I feel like we have to constantly jump through hoops and fire. But at the same time, I get it that since we didn't attend an American, AVMA recognized school, we didn't have to pay for it. We have to work that little extra hard.
Do
So
you, okay, well, tell me about it because I don't know anything about the AVMA program and the ECFVG. What does that stand for?
Educational Commission for Foreign Veterinary Graduates.
Okay, so that's part of the whole jumping through hoops thing that you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about that for people like me that don't know what that's all about.
Okay, so what really matters is whether the school that you went to is recognized by AVMA or not. And if it's not, then you can't really get your veterinary license in the US unless you prove that you are an equal to an AVMA recognized school graduate.
Okay.
And there are two programs. One of them is the one by AVMA and it's ECFVG, which I am trying to complete. There is another one, it's called PAVE. And to be honest, I don't know too much about it. When I was doing my initial research, I just found out that, first of all, after completing that program, you are not guaranteed to be able to get your veterinary license in all the states. It's not really like a major difference. Like I think there's like only 4 or so states that are an exception.
Mhm.
And also in that program, you have to complete 1 year of an externship at one of the designated vet schools. So it's very competitive. And you
Right,
have
right.
to pay a lot of
It's hard
money
to
for
get
that.
internships as it is. You're competing against the students from here too, right?
I don't think you like compete against them, but you need to be able to find a school that's going to accept you.
Right, right. Yeah,
Based of what I've been hearing, people struggle with finding a spot. So,
that makes sense.
but at the same time, I don't know too much about it. I know what I'm doing. For,
Okay. Tell
for-
us about that a little bit.
um, so, the program has 4 steps. I think, yeah, 4. So initially, when we sign up, we have to, obviously provide all the transcripts, like all the paperwork. Their office contacts your school to verify everything, and initially you have to pay a little bit of money to even begin the process. Then, while they're working on that, you can get started with other steps. And for everyone who went to a school not in the US or any other English speaking country, unless they attended high school in the US, we have to prove our ability to speak English. So we have to take that exam first. And that is not so bad. Like, if you know that you will be doing that, I would hope that everyone can speak English well enough to at least, pass the exam.
Pass that. Is it a verbal test?
Oh, it's multiple parts
Oh,
test.
okay, different
Oral
thing.
is also part of that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I did the academic IELTS and I really didn't have any problems with that. But at the same time, like throughout my entire education, I was taking Cambridge certification programs. So that that was the easy
No
part.
big deal.
Yes, that was the easy part.
Right.
Um, and once the office approves the result of that English exam, then you are able to take what I refer to as baby NAVLE. Um,
Okay.
it's BCSE, and kill me, but I don't remember what's the abbreviation from. It's Basic Clinical and Sciences exam, I believe.
Okay.
Uh, so It has a similar format to NAVLE. It is a computer-based test that's multiple choice, and a major difference is that it focuses not so much on clinical cases as NAVLE, more so on basic sciences, just like the name states, like
Okay.
physiology, pathophysiology, things like surgical tools, all the little things that you
Right.
need to know if you want to practice and if you
Right.
want to stand a chance at NAVLE, because
Okay.
you're not allowed to sit NAVLE until you pass BCSE.
Okay. And that's something that do they offer that frequently, or does it kind of clash with the Navali?
Um, I mean, it doesn't really clash because you can't move on until you're done with it. Um, but it's not really like they don't offer it like in any like specific windows throughout the year like with
Okay.
NAVLE. It's
Right.
just that I think it has to be 3 months apart between your attempts.
Oh, okay.
So I was not
If
successful.
you don't pass it.
Yeah, and I was not successful the first 2 times. Um,
You took this test.
yes, so I
Okay. Oh,
passed it on my third try, so that did take me like almost a year to pass it.
you pass that, and then you have to go on to the Navali. So now you're in that.
Yeah,
I don't want to skip ahead. Is there more?
yes, there is.
Okay. Keep going then.
Oh,
Let me shortcut it. I want to hear the whole thing.
so after you clear BCSC, you are able to take the next 2 exams. Either NAVLE, you can go for it, or you can sign up and take the practical exam. Or you can do both at the same time, whatever you choose. Um, so the practical exam, that's a fun one. I'm sorry.
No
Uh,
worries. It
it's a,
happens.
yeah, it's a 3 days long exam that costs almost $8,000 and is only held at 2 places currently in the US. So
What?
it's extremely difficult to find a spot. People set up like 24-hour watch to land a spot. And once you land a spot, you need to wait for that date that is, given to you. So in my case, I booked my exam early December of 2022, and I had to wait almost a year to take it on November 28th, I remember. So even though that it was my first time, I still had to wait almost a year just to take it.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a part about it that's, annoying. It's frustrating because even if you feel ready, you can't take it. So, that builds up the frustration. Because
Well,
also,
and I would think in a lot of ways that it prevents you from, well, the emotional part of it has to be horrible, but it prevents you from retaining all the things you learned because now you're going, years without being able to practice.
that
Like,
too.
how do you keep up your skills when they're putting all these roadblocks up for you to pass to become licensed?
I mean, there are ways around it, within obviously like legal,
Right, right.
yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that, like within legal limits of,
Right,
what you
right.
can do.
You could work under another veterinarian's license as long as
Um,
they were with you, kind of thing. But yeah,
yeah,
there's a lot of stuff,
um,
a lot of I don't
yes,
know.
yeah, that's a part of it. But to me, like another big thing is that, nobody that's taken these exams is 20 anymore. I'm
Right,
close to 30. Like I
right,
am starting to think about maybe starting a family.
right.
Maybe
Yeah,
not 100% in my case, but other people my age.
sure. Yeah.
And we still have to pay for all those exams. Can't really make any good money unless,
And until you get them passed.
yeah,
Yeah.
unless you work in a different field. Um, so it's a struggle. It is.
Yeah.
But, I keep telling myself that, in the end, it's all going to be worth it. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm not sure, maybe it's a train. Not sure yet. But
Yeah. And so after you take this test that's $8,000 that they only give, very rarely, and it's so hard to get it, you take that and you pass that, right? Did you pass that on your first try?
no, so the pass rate is my info might not be entirely true, but based on what I've heard, the pass rate is 25%.
What?
Yeah. Um,
Why? That doesn't make any sense.
so
That's
uh,
crazy. And so do you have to pay $8,000 again?
no, that
Oh,
depends on how many sections you fail. So, like I
I see.
mentioned, the exam is 3 days long and it consists of 7 sections. It's small animal medicine, food animal practice, equine practice, necropsy, radiology, surgery, and anesthesia. So, personally, I've never been good with cows, so I had to learn all of that pretty much from
Right.
scratch. Um, but for lots of people, anesthesia and surgery are the portions that are, they either make them or break them.
Yeah.
So personally, I did not pass everything on the first try. I did pass 6 out of 7, so I'm still very happy about my result. I really can't complain. I'm fine.
Right,
Uh,
right.
I failed anesthesia. Um, so that stings. And I failed it for something silly that I will be mindful of for the rest of my life.
You'll
Uh,
never forget.
I will never
As
forget.
most of us never forget our big mistakes, right?
That's how you learn. So,
Yeah. Fixes the
I
brain.
can't complain. I can't complain about it too much because, it's the standard that they set to make sure that we are all good enough to practice, that we're not going to cause any harm, that we're not, people who have no idea how to stick to American standard of practice. So,
Right.
for that reason, I really can't be mad about anything. But again, what stings is that I have to wait 8 months to retake just that one section. So that's,
That's disappointing.
it's a waiting game
Yeah.
with this entire process.
Right. And then comes the NAVLE.
And then comes the Natalie, yes.
Okay. And people just got their results of the NAVLE, what, 3 weeks ago?
Um, I
Oh,
was at BMX at the time, so whenever,
oh
whenever,
yeah, VMX. We were just there just a
yeah.
couple weeks ago. Yeah. So I know from the bottom of my heart that there's other people out there that didn't pass the NAVLE, but talk to me a little bit about that process, how it's been for you.
So I just failed Napoli again, and it was my third attempt. So I'm not too thrilled about it. Um, the last time I failed was by 2%, like the 16 points. This time I failed by 1.125%. So, I'm headed in the right direction.
Right. That's a good way to think about it. It's still, I mean, let's just talk about that. Let's just talk about how that feels when you're trying to get this accomplished for your career, because this is a make or break it, right?
Yeah.
If you don't pass the NAVLE, you can't practice here.
Yep.
Yeah. So talk to the other people out there that have been through this.
We really just have to toughen it out, I feel. There is no way to work around it. Um, Somebody asked me, what are you going to do differently this time? And it really hit home. I was like, okay, yeah, the last 3 times I mostly focus on what everyone else does, right? The question banks, reviewing, reading books, listening to lectures from those Q banks. Um, Mostly just that. And my boss would constantly tell me, don't do the questions, read the books. So all of that in the back is mostly my study books that are references for the exam. But being realistic, you can't really read everything and stay focused. Like that's not really what the exam tests. So this time around, I'm trying to make my own videos on topics because to my surprise, I keep scoring low in feline medicine. So I decided to focus on that and switch things up a little bit and really get into the nitty-gritty details of everything to make sure that, there will be no feline question that will be a surprise to me.
Right.
But other than that, I am sticking to, the beaten path of doing the questions, looking things up on MercVet, which I absolutely love, um, looking things up in textbooks, also participating in group chats where you discuss certain questions or, certain topics. Um, like I'm trying to think if there is really anything else that you can do to prepare for this exam, but I feel
Yeah.
like it's just both broadening your knowledge and getting into the details really to make sure that there will be nothing that will come up that you've never seen before.
Right.
Personally, for me, English is still sometimes an issue because sometimes there will be one single word in a question that if I don't know it, then I don't know what is
It will throw you. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
sense of the question. Like I just recently learned the word to hasten. Hasten?
Hasten. Yeah. Hasten,
Hasten.
like hurry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So see, I
Yeah,
don't
that's not a word people use in everyday talk. Hasten. Like,
so the question was like how to hasten something. And if you don't
right. And
know
how
what
would you
that
know what
means,
that was? Yeah.
yeah. So,
Oh, see that makes me think that there's something about that test that whoever writes it, I don't know, there's probably a committee, but it's like, why would they do that? Especially if they know students like you who are foreign trying to get, using English as your second language, taking this test, that they wouldn't make some accommodation or, you know, because you
uh,
can't ask, right? Could you raise your hand and say, can you tell me what this word means?
I don't think so. No, I have considered asking for accommodations for my ADHD, but I decided not to. Like I'm so close. I don't think I need to resort to that. But I don't think that we are eligible to ask for any accommodations just because we are not from here. Because
Right.
like the entire point of, at least, that's what I think of ECFVG, the first two steps, right? They are
To
there
make
to make
sure.
sure that
Yeah.
you do speak the language.
Right, right. Yeah. Oh,
So,
that's
um,
heartbreaking.
so at the same time, it's like, yeah, I should know that. But at the same time, I do know that there is no way for me to know 100% of everything. But,
You can't know every word in the English language.
but you can try.
Well, I think some of the problem with these kind of tests is actual test taking skills. And I learned them when I was in college and veterinary school because that's how we were tested. Those
Mhm.
multiple choice, multiple choice, multiple choice. And there's a skill to that. Like you have to read the question first, figure out what they're looking for before you even start looking at the answers. And I think some of us have a tendency to read the whole question and then read all four answers. And by the time you get to the bottom answer, you're so confused because you just read like three paragraphs. And so I'm sure well, I know there's programs out there that teach people how to take tests. Um, but I don't understand why this NAVLE has become such a mountain for veterinarians. There's so many that fail, and it's very discouraging that they have to keep taking it over and over and over again when they're
Yeah,
probably going to be lovely doctors.
yeah, but then, when you look at the statistics, the pass rate is what, like about 90%. So it's not really like,
Is it really only 10% fail?
I think so. I haven't checked the latest, but it's anywhere between
Pretty high.
87 to like 98% pass rate over the
Okay.
past 2 years. So there's that. But now that you mentioned, that you have been basically trained to take multiple choice tests, most of my exams and tests were oral in vet
Right.
school.
And
So
and it's a whole different skill.
it is. So yeah, maybe I wish that, it was not multiple choice. I actually had a nightmare lately that I was taking Neville again, and the final portion of it was to write an essay in German. And I was
What?
I haven't, used that language in years. Okay, I guess it's just gonna have to be Rammstein lyrics.
Oh my
But I gotta
gosh.
do it.
Yeah, good thing I didn't have to write in German. I wouldn't even be able to write one word. That's something. Yeah. Well, let's just talk briefly, because I don't want to go on this too long. I want to talk to you about some other things, but let's just talk briefly about the mental part of getting this kind of news time, because you said this was your third time that you failed.
Yeah.
So, you failed the other test and you have to retake part of that. And now the NAVLE, like, what does that do to you? And how do you get through it?
So the initial few times I would cry, I would sob for a few hours, get a pint of ice cream, and just kind of try to rock
Be
myself,
sad.
try to
Be
sleep.
sad. Yeah.
Because it is, you
Yeah. It's very sad. You have to feel that sadness.
now, with every consecutive fail, I cry less and less. Eventually, I guess I'm growing a tougher
It gets
skin.
easier, right? It gets easier
Yeah.
to fail when you failed before.
Yeah, but a sense of grief does kick in because you had all those hopes and expectations of yourself that are in a moment met with a bucket of cold water.
Hmm.
And I really think that it's important to allow yourself to take a step back, eat that kind of ice cream, which obviously I've had a lot of, uh, and just think about what went wrong and how to move on from there, because there is no point to in my opinion, there is no point to get right back in the saddle upset and with unrealistic expectations when you're still in the heat of the moment. I think
Right.
it does take a few days for the grief to kind of fade away, and I would really compare it to like the sense of grief.
It absolutely is grief. What you're grieving is your career, right? You're grieving your expectations that you
Yeah.
had, that you thought you'd have a job. I mean, I know other veterinarians that have failed and they've had a job lined up. And then you're grieving the salary, that you lost. You're grieving the idea that, people ask you, did you pass? And you have to say no. Like that's really difficult. There's so much when you're grieving that I think, you just have to understand that it is a process.
It
It's
definitely.
not an overnight thing. You can't turn it around right away.
And I think we are also given that time between attempts. I would know all about it now, because when you get the results, you cannot sign up for the next window immediately. Sometimes
Right.
has to pass, and you do have the time to think, do I want to take it the next window, or do I want to sit this one out and take it the following window?
Right.
Uh, Personally, I'm just pushing through it. I am a firm believer in short-term memory, so I don't want to lose any of the
Yeah, you
information.
don't want to lose ground.
Yeah, especially that I've gotten so close yet so far.
Right.
So yeah, I'll be taking it again in April.
So if there's other people out there that are in the same boat with you, what advice would you give them? Eat a pint of ice cream, cry a lot, and
Yes.
get through that because that's part of the grieving process. But do you have any other words of support? I think part of just hearing that somebody else is going through what you're going through is so valuable. Like I didn't get into vet school till my third try, and I went through the same thing. Like I cried and I had to wait a whole year and had to apply again and interview again. Like it's a process, and you don't know when you're going to pass it. You don't know when you're going to get accepted, and a lot of that fear of the unknown is so heavy.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I don't really think that I am in a position to tell anyone what to do. Like, I'm not really, in the position to give legit
Advice.
advice.
Yeah,
But what I can say is that you would be surprised how many people struggle, but they just don't put their name to it online.
absolutely. Yep. Yep, there are a lot. And I know that because I talk to some of them
Yeah.
and they say, "Well, I'm the only one. I'm, stupid because everybody else passed." I'm like, "No, if you look at 10% didn't pass, that's a lot of people."
And this is what I've noticed, which might not be entirely true. It might be, just my bias. But even seeing my husband when he was still in school, people don't talk about their results. They don't compare the results. It's like
Right.
a hush hush thing.
Yeah.
It's just pass, fail, and if fail, then just, don't talk about it.
Right.
And when I was in school, we knew everything about each other. We knew everything about others' results. It was not something that was kept quiet. Uh,
Right.
because also that's how we would bond, whenever we would
Sure.
have to.
Yeah. If you did bad, your other friends would be like, "Well, I passed this one." And then the next one, they'd help you study more because they know you needed it better because you failed. Or, yeah, I
That's
think
how I,
there's something good about bonding over those things.
oh yeah, I call it trauma bonding, and I think it's real,
Trauma bonding. I like that. That's a good name.
So this is how I made some of my best friends in vet school because we all had certain struggles. We would both end up, repeating certain classes, retaking certain tests, seeing each other,
Right.
the
Right.
whole way. And like this is how you bond. And I think it does translate to NAVLE and, even ECFVG because this is how I've also met lots of truly amazing people that
Mm,
are in the same boat. And it's just a matter of reaching out
right.
and owning up to it. Yes, I am struggling with it. Hey, I see that you're also doing all of this. Tell me your secrets. Tell me what
Right.
you're doing. Uh,
Right.
just last night, somebody that I've never even seen or talked to just messaged me on Facebook like, "Hey, I saw that you are retaking your NAVLE again. Do you mind if we ask each other one question a day?" And I'm like, "Sure."
That's
I don't know.
awesome.
Yeah, I don't know your name. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Start a
Yeah.
little study group or yeah, that's the only way I got through that school. I swear if I didn't have my friends, I probably would have never made it because it was kind of like we all get together and cram before every test. And, if you didn't know something, your friend would say, "Okay, here's how I remember it. This is
Yep.
going to be on the test. You have to remember this." And I had one friend that made up stories about every disease. So she had these crazy stories, but you'd laugh at her stories and then you'd be like, "Oh, that's her crazy story." So yeah, I think that's really valuable. And I think that shame that comes with failure is something that we need to let go of because everybody fails. Like
Yep.
that's part of success. Like if you didn't try hard things, you wouldn't never fail, but we all are doing hard things,
Yeah, I do keep repeating myself that nothing that's worth it comes easy. Uh,
right?
sometimes I absolutely hate it, but
All right. Yeah, you do because it is such a discouraging thing. Okay, so let's jump off the subject a little bit and we'll get back to it if we need to. But tell me about the social media thing because you told me that and I'm fascinated by social media. I like social media, but I try not to spend too much time on it. I actually have a thing on my phone that cuts me off so I don't get sucked in.
yeah, I
But
should.
tell me about your social media journey because you told me you started it in Poland, right?
Yeah, so I initially started out with my page in Poland, and it was just really an outlet to vent. And I don't even remember when, but all of a sudden it just blew up. And, it turns out that everybody could, not everybody, lots of people could relate to my struggles in vet school.
Right.
And so I guess this is just my way of coping with stress, to turn everything into a joke. My
Okay.
husband gets tired of it, honestly. Like, it does get annoying. I know it, but again, this is how I cope. So I would just, turn a lot of my struggles into memes, into, just dark humor, and people relate to that. And, if it helps anyone else to laugh things off,
Right.
just to, power through certain things and be like, oh, it's not just me
Right.
struggling with XYZ. And this is a way to turn this into, a joke.
Something
It's,
silly. Yeah.
yeah. So that's been my recipe for success, I guess, just really venting about anything that needed to be talked about. And I've been doing that pretty shamelessly for years now. Like, I actually ended up getting a prize when I was graduating vet school for, my presence in social media. And I was like, really? For venting about
Get
vet
the
school?
social media vet school prize.
Yeah, that felt amazing. But yeah, so that's how it all started. And then I met my now husband, who is American, and I knew that down the line I would be moving to the States. And Polish is not really a common language, not in the internet for sure. So I was like, let me think of something that I could continue doing when I move abroad and would be in English. So that's how I started Veterinary Fair, which was, a play on Vanity Fair. And I've been doing that for, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years now. And
Okay,
basically just copying the style that I've been using for years.
right.
And yes, now that I am a veterinarian, I am trying to take a little different angle. Like, I don't want to just laugh about things and make silly, sometimes stupid and low blow jokes at school things. I am trying to use my presence also to educate as much as I can. Also, because I'm taking all these exams, I do have certain things that I want to put out there. So it's becoming something maybe a little different. I am not entirely sure where it's headed yet. I just recently started making videos for Navly review
Mm,
because not only it's a different thing that I
right.
can try to
Yes.
to study, but also I'm hoping that it will help those people who can't afford the premiums with lectures. And
Right.
I gather the information from textbooks, from everything that I can use to really make comprehensive notes. And repeating that, also helps me memorize
To
things.
study. Yeah. That's a
Yes.
great idea.
So it's not just memes anymore. It's more education now, definitely. And yeah, I just enjoy doing that.
Yeah. That's fun. I mean, that's how I stumbled across you on Instagram. And I was like, oh, this looks interesting. I'm going to have to get her on the podcast. So, what did I not ask you that you want to talk about
Mm,
that we haven't mentioned yet? We can always do this again. We can come up with more ideas to talk. Maybe more about the Navally, or maybe just about the struggles that younger veterinarians go through in general. Um, but I always ask people if there's something I should ask you that I don't know to ask or that I didn't ask.
I can't really think of anything because I know that you had that list and I think we covered. uh,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, why don't you tell people where they can contact you or find you if they want to follow you if they don't already, and if they have ideas for you or they want to join your Navally struggles and studies, how they can find that information.
So you can find me as Veterinary Fair on, I think, most of social media platforms. I am mostly active on Instagram and I do read my DMs. So if you want to reach me there, then I will eventually get back to you. It might take a while. Uh,
Right.
but aside from that, I'm also active on Facebook, and there I have groups for NAVLE prep. There is also a group for ECFVG candidates. They are all linked in my highlights on Instagram. So that's probably like the best way
The
to,
best place to find them.
yes,
Okay.
and everything. I think pretty much everything is linked there. And yeah, it's veterinary fair across all the platforms.
That's amazing. So I really appreciate this conversation. There's so many more things that we could talk about. So maybe we'll try to get together again at some point, or we'll get a group of people that are struggling with the NAVLE or something of that nature. There's just so many more things that we could bring to veterinarians. And I just really appreciate you being on the podcast with me and talking about all these things. And if there's anything that I can do to help you, you'll just have to let me know.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for also providing me with the space to talk about ECFVG and, the struggles of a foreign vet, because I feel like it's a topic that is not widely recognized.
Yeah, and that may be a great idea if we could get other veterinarians that are foreign to talk about that together as a subject. Maybe you could talk some more about that.
Oh, I know exactly the right people.
Oh,
Yeah.
do you? Okay, well, let's do that. I'd be happy to have you all on. I've had groups before
Mhm.
of, 3 or 4 people, and that's always interesting to me. And that may help some other people that are in your same shoes. So that would be great. Okay, any favorite quotes or books or anything before we close? I like quotes, so sometimes people, if they have a favorite quote, I'll ask them that.
God, the first thing that came to my head was the, the KISS method.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
keep it simple, stupid.
Okay, I love that.
I
That's
love it.
great.
It's not a quote, but it's something that just really sunk in. And, whenever I start overthinking things, just KISS.
Think about Kiss. Yeah, that's great because that's something that people don't talk about much, but they used to say that a lot.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. Yeah, I love that. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, everyone. This is Dr. Aleksandra Ascione. Did I say that right?
Yes, yes.
And she is Veterinary Fair on Instagram. So go check her out, and I will have her back on the podcast again, I'm sure. Have a beautiful week, everyone. Bye. Bye, Aleksandra.
Bye.